All right, we are live, folks. Welcome. It's
What's
Friday.
up? What's up? What's up? Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to another live training here in the Facebook Ad Class Facebook group.
That's
We're
right.
pumped. We're
If
pumped.
you're not in the Ad Class Facebook group, that's where you want to be. That's where you want to be to get all your questions answered. So I know we're live on YouTube and on the public Facebook page. If you're not in the group, go to facebook.com/groups/free-ad-class. And you basically get an open door to us and asking any questions. You can get into here, ask questions on this live training. We'll answer them live with you. But today we got a big one, don't we, Caleb?
Yes, we do. We're talking about optimizing and scaling up your ads. This is one of the things that honestly a lot of people inside of our ad class program have actually been talking about lately, which is, okay, cool. I've done all of this work to get like the copy done, the creative done. I've launched my ads, right? I've done all of that work to get up to that point. But now that they've been launched, how do I optimize and tweak to make sure that I'm getting the best return on my ads and then also being able to scale up, right? Because we can't scale our company and spend more on ads until stuff is actually working, right? So we got to kind of crack the code there and figure out what's working. And that's what we're going to talk about on this training specifically. So if you've launched ads or even if you haven't launched ads yet and you're curious, like, how do I actually know what's working? This is the video for you.
That's right. And you might call it scaling. You might call it optimizing. People have different words for it. But at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is make sure our ads are as efficient as possible. And there's so many buttons you can push, so many numbers you can look at. So our job today is to simplify all that down to you, the viewer at home, so that you can understand, like, hey, is this working? Is it not? If it's working, how do I make it work better and get more return out of it? Right? Simple as that.
Exactly. And it's cool. This is one of the pretty neat value adds of coming to these trainings is we actually literally launched some campaigns to a funnel specifically to just collect data. So that way, when we're going through how to optimize on this training and inside of our ad class group, we're actually using like real live data, like of ads that we're actually running right now. So when we screen share here in a second, we're actually going to be looking at live campaigns, a real funnel that's literally built so that we can just like teach and show you guys. So we're really excited about that.
Let's go. All right, Caleb, anything we want to run through before we get into the doc? I think we have a lot of good stuff, sort of preliminary stuff that we can share right on scaling and culling in the doc. We could probably start there and then we'll head right into the ad account from there.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Let me share my screen. Again, if you're in the comments, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to get my screen share going here. All right, cool. So first things first, in order to scale your ads, you obviously have to have ads launched first. So we've done a lot of trainings here in the Facebook group. We're not going to go through how to actually launch ads today because we've got other trainings for free on Facebook, on YouTube. Check them out on how to actually get your ads launched. And the platform that we're talking about today is Meta Ads. And so obviously we're on Facebook right now. That's owned by Meta. Instagram, WhatsApp, all sorts of platforms are owned by Meta. Threads now, new one. And so we're talking about Meta Ads. And the reason for that and why we focus so heavily on Meta Ads is actually because it makes the most sense to launch an offer first on Meta Ads. Caleb, you want to talk about why that might be?
Yeah. So it's the one that we always refer to simply because it's really a creative discussion, right? And so obviously if you're going to launch ads, you got to know, okay, what am I going to show to my customers, right, or my prospects? And when you're getting started with Facebook and Instagram, you can get started with images and carousels, right? And there's a bunch of different like placement types that are easier to get into, lower barrier to entry. Whereas when you're getting started with YouTube, we all know that with YouTube, creative is king. And so you're going to have multiple different videos to test on YouTube. And a lot of times with YouTube, you want really great quality. You don't necessarily have to have that when you get started, but it really helps. And so it kind of creates this like higher barrier to entry with YouTube because not everybody out there has like a really great video editor to go in and add, fancy subtitles and transitions and all this stuff, right? So, so Facebook and Instagram, you don't have to have video. Of course, it can help, but really good copy and some really solid images is an amazing way to get started and kind of just figure out if your offer is working. So
yeah, exactly. So that's why we suggest starting on Meta. And so let's just go to the scenario where we're at today. So you've got your ads going, right? You've got your ads going. now what? It's kind of like you did the hard thing. You got the content written, you wrote the copy, you got the videos or the photos, all that stuff. You figured out how to publish it, and you've got live ads. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So you've done, honestly, kind of the easy part, right? Unfortunately, the easy part is pushing publish. The hard part then is understanding, is it going to work? Is it working? What do I do from here? So first things first, we're going to go through this when I share my screen on the ad account. But the very first thing that you need to do to make sure to understand if your ads are working or not is get what we call the column view figured out. Column view is basically just in Facebook Ads Manager or Meta Ads Manager. It's how you see the data. Right. So a lot of people just log in and they just leave it default like that. The problem with that is that the ad account really isn't showing you all the stuff you need to see. So I'm actually going to pull up an ad account now so I can show you exactly what I mean here, because I think it'll be easier to see for you. All right, so here's the ads manager. So this is a sample ad account here. We're running some offers, testing some things in here that are brand new. But as you can see here, these columns that go up and down, these are what we're referring to as the column view, right? The ones that I have here are very, very, very intentional, right? This column view is very intentional. What you don't want to do is start with what they give you, which is when you just load Facebook for the first time, they're going to give you something called performance view here, probably. If not performance, it might be engagement. It might be video engagement, right? These are like their defaults. Performance view really doesn't tell me everything I need to see right away. I don't even know right now by default, I don't even know how much these ads spent as an example, right? Which is kind of important. So we want to be able to rearrange these columns. That's the very first thing that's super important is getting your column views in order. So what we recommend is you click on columns, you come down here to customize. We recommend these columns right here. So I'm going to run through these kind of quick. You have this video. You can come back to this video. It'll be in the Facebook group and on YouTube. You can pause it, make sure your columns are the same. But these are the ones that we recommend starting with for conversion campaigns. So we've got campaign, amount spent, budget, reach, and frequency. A lot of people will do impressions. Impressions is just reach times frequency. So that means how many unique people saw your ad and how many times did they see it. I like to see those two things separately, right? Unique link clicks. We say unique link clicks because basically we only care about, when we're running a conversion campaign, we only care about unique people who clicked out of Facebook and onto your web page, right? And that's what a unique link click is tracking. We don't care about all clicks. Or any of those other things that are a little bit more arbitrary. Unique click-through rate, cost per unique link click, and cost per 1,000 impressions. We can get more into cost per 1,000 impressions at another time, but basically that's just how expensive are your ads. How much are you paying for 1,000 people to see your ad? And then we get into the actual events. If you followed our trainings up to this point, you've set your funnel up with conversion events. You're doing great. This is how we actually see if those conversion events are firing. So we have completed registrations and cost, content views and cost, and appointments scheduled and cost. So that's the first step. Before you can literally tell anything going on in your ad account, you have to get your column view set up.
Yep. Crazy important, guys. Like, make sure you take a second to do that, because if you're trying to optimize, but you don't actually know what you're looking at, you're setting yourself up for failure. So take a second to do that first, for sure.
Yep. Awesome. So that's the first step, of course. Now we're in this ad account here. I'm going to just stay in the ad account, but basically, very first thing, and sometimes I break this rule, but this is a rule that I would say, especially beginners who don't know what to look for, you cannot break this rule. And that is, let the ads run for 7 days. Let the ads run for 7 days. I have broken these rules. Caleb knows I'm somewhat chronic rule breaker myself, but ideally what we want to do is let the ads have enough time to actually learn and generate results before we go in and make any changes. Okay. Yeah. So when you look at a last 7 day window, you should have a full data set to work with. You shouldn't have, like just partial data. That gets confusing. You don't really know what's working and what's not. So basically, yeah, let's definitely let the ads work. Let them do their magic, right? And try not to mess with them before the 7 day mark, because that's kind of the baby phase, right? So yeah, Caleb, explain why we shouldn't mess with things as much during that first 7 days.
Yeah, no, it's super important, guys. I mean, basically, like ads and results are gonna like vary day by day, right? And we all know that like in pretty much everything in life, right? A single day can be a good day, and a single day can also be a bad day. So what we don't want to do is like look at ad stats from a single day and be like, oh my gosh, that day wasn't great. So this must mean that everything that I just did is a massive failure, right? That's not the case. Give it some time, get some actual data to collect, right? And then start to make some decisions. But you never want to just look at, this is what so many beginners do is like they'll launch ads and they're like 3 hours into their ads being launched and they're like, I don't have any purchases yet or whatever, right? And it's like, all right, hold up. You got to give it some time to learn, to collect some data. Ads are not a thing of like, it's not an instant gratification type game, right? Like, especially when you're in more of like higher end services, right? Like in ecom, it's a little bit more instant gratification, but with the ads that we typically run in like higher end services, it's not instant, right? Like the sales cycle is a little bit longer. It takes some time to collect some data on things. And so, yeah, so don't rush into, canceling things or turning things off if like you're only looking at a day's worth of data. Give it 7 days.
100%. I love that. So yeah, once you get kind of enough data, so there are some things like within the first 7 days you can be looking for, like, right, understanding if things are working or not. And so a really good example of that is actually this first campaign here, right? So you can see, I'll zoom in so that you guys can see this a little bit better. But this very first campaign that we're talking about here is actually a carousel ad. Okay. And so this carousel ad, I'm looking at the last 7 days and basically when I'm comparing the results with everything else in the account, I can look and see that my click-through rate is only 0.67% on this ad. My account average is 1.68%, right? So I've got other campaigns in here running closer to 4% even. So when I see this 0.67%, that means only 0.67% of people who saw the ad actually clicked on it. So because of that, the cost per click is really high.
What would you say, Dakota, is like an average click-through rate that someone can expect?
Yeah, so every account's a little bit different, but 1% unique click-through rate or better, so 1% or higher is really what we're shooting for. So in this account, obviously, our creative is performing a little bit better than that. That's great. I'll take that every day of the week. But 1% is really kind of what we're shooting for. So if it's under 1%, chances are it's not quite hitting the right target market or it's not quite an attractive enough ad for people. And so, yeah, so basically I was looking at this and we ended up turning this one off because ultimately, if we're looking at costs across the board, it was getting registrations completed at $25 compared to our account average of 15, right? And every other metric down the line was a little bit worse. I ended up finding out that there was actually some duplicate schedules here. So really it was one call scheduled for this campaign as well. So that's $384 a call. So, when I'm looking at the metrics all the way across the board for this campaign, I did make an early decision and turned it off after about 3 or 4 days because I thought basically because of the click-through rate and the cost per click, those were a little bit too high for anything to work down the line at scale, right? And so there are things that you can do in the baby steps within the first 7 days that, can probably move the needle a little bit for your ads. And you can, especially once you're used to optimizing, you'll probably be able to pinpoint things pretty quickly. But for the most part, we would say wait a little bit longer unless those first 2 or 3 metrics, click-through rate, cost per click, and lead costs were egregiously bad, basically.
Right. Yeah. So there's kind of like those early signals, right? Like if you see one of those 3 metrics way off, then hey, you could probably take some action, right? Yep. But if not, give it some time to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is like, because you're optimizing for certain things with these ads, you guys have seen our trainings in the past, you can see I'm optimized towards schedule here. It's not always a bad thing that the front end metrics aren't working because Facebook might just be trying to find people who it knows will schedule, right? And so lead cost might not be as good, right? If I compare this to, an O registration campaign, we're likely going to see a vastly different lead cost, right? We're going to see $25 versus $11 as an example, just because of the optimization event. So you have to keep the optimization event in mind as you're making changes as well. Exactly. Especially with early data. But yeah, so the question really is, how do we scale here, right? And this account is pretty dang young, so it's not going to be super easy to think through like a scale plan for it, but I think we can definitely look at some things here, right? So we know in this account, as an example, our objective is to get booked calls, right? Our objective is booked calls. We care about leads. Leads are great. Registration's completed. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we want booked calls and then obviously sales. So for us, when we're looking at this account, that's what we're keeping in mind. Your goals might be different, right? You have to know what your goals are first, and you have to know what you're willing to pay for that goal in order to understand what you should scale and what you shouldn't. So that's kind of the first step.
Yep.
We call those goals KPIs also. You might hear that terminology.
Yeah. And just to jump in again, guys, like it's so important to have your comm view set up, right? Because what he's talking about here is being able to look and view the specific events that you're trying to track, right? If you know you want sales or you want calls, you've got to set up your view to be able to actually see those things, right? Because when you log in on the default view, they're not going to show you that stuff. So it's so important to make sure that you're actually looking at what matters.
Exactly. Yeah. So the column view, is huge. Now, so here's some interesting stuff. I'm going to just pan for the last couple of days, and I'm going to talk through some of the changes that Caleb and I have made in this account recently that is actually sort of a scale plan in itself, right? And so when we launched these early on last week, we weren't super happy with the fact that we weren't getting a lot of booked calls from our original spending ads. Okay, so if I pull last 7 days and we sort by amount spent, I like to sort by amount spent because now I know stuff at the top has spent more than stuff at the bottom, right? You can see that all of these top 5 campaigns, they're off. Right. So I made some early changes to these because I knew what I was looking for and they weren't showing it. Now these two and some of these down here are on, right? And that's because basically as part of my scale plan, we made minute changes to either the audience, the ad, or the funnel and reduplicated out these campaigns in order to see the change and see the basically our goals get achieved in a different way. So I'm going to talk through that because I think it's kind of a cool example. The very first change we made was we were optimizing a bunch of stuff up here for schedule early on, and we noticed that when we were doing that, our lead cost was very high. So as you can see here, our lead cost was 25, 34, and 31. So immediately I thought to myself, well, I think we should test this optimizing for registration instead. And you can see these 3 here are here, and I think that's just those 2 actually that I duplicated out and did toward registration. Well, look at our results. We cut the lead cost by 66%, basically, from 34, 31, and 25 down to $11. And when we did that, what we noticed was we still weren't getting booked calls though. So as I said before, this was 1 booked call. We had none from here. We had 1 from here, 1 from here, and just a couple from here. So we did get a couple booked calls. On the back end, just for your guys' knowledge, they weren't qualified book calls. So they still weren't really what we were looking for. So we made another change and we tested out a different funnel, a different entry point to the funnel, right? But still sending to a booked call page. And that's kind of where we're at now. So you can kind of see now our lead cost is down to $6.91, right? And we're getting calls within KPI. Here's a call here for $36. Here's a call here for $172. All because we were looking at the data, understanding what our KPIs were, and swapping things in order to get to the achieved goal or the goal that we were trying to achieve, right?
Yep. And I think one of the things to highlight here too is that like this is obviously a brand new account. So some of you guys that are watching this, you might have a new account, or you might have like an account that you've run a little bit of ads in, right? But you haven't done a ton of spend yet. And so if you're in that scenario, it's really important to know that when you're optimizing towards events that are further down into your funnel. So for example, how Dakota just mentioned, he started with the schedule, which is a little bit further down, right? We did that, but we didn't really have a pixel or anything that had been like learning yet, right? And so I think part of the reason why we switched over to the optimizing towards the lead or the completed registration, it's a top of funnel event, right? There's less friction to get to that piece. So one of the things I think I would just say to you guys out there is that like if you're getting started and you don't have any data at all yet, one of the easy ways to start to just kind of build up that pixel and start to build data for your account is to try to optimize towards top of funnel stuff just to get lead flow coming in, right? And once the lead flow starts coming in, the pixel will start to learn, the other events will start to happen in time, and then you can start to pivot to optimizing towards things like a schedule or maybe even a purchase later down the road.
Yep.
But just a little quick tip there for people with like younger accounts. So
yeah, no, yeah, you're exactly right. So sometimes I've seen starting with OSchedule works right away. Other times not. And that's why we tested it. Right. And so if for every account, it's going to be a little bit different. Okay. So I'm just going to filter down though by the stuff that we have on right now, Caleb. And I think we can talk through now. We don't have a ton of data here, but we have, $500 in spend on it. I think we can talk through kind of what we're looking for to understand if we want to scale some of this up, because each one of these campaigns are at $80 a day. I'm actually going to go and just do this month view here. So there you go. We have $777 worth of data. Each of these are about $80 a day. We have different audiences for each of these two. These are basically lookalike audiences within these. And then there's slightly different creative, but for the most part, this is all the same funnel. So we're looking at apples to apples in terms of funnel here. So what's the first thing that we'd be looking at, Caleb, to understand, do we like these campaigns? Do we not? Do we want to scale? Do we not?
Well, yeah. So first off, I like how you have it filtered down by, or sorted, I should say, by amount spent. So we can know, okay, like what's actually been spending and like what hasn't had a ton yet. So I love that you kind of started there. I think the next thing that we're going to want to look at is kind of those early metrics that you mentioned beforehand, right? So like, what are we paying for like clicks? What does CTR look like, right? And see like if there's anything that's standing out. After that, we're going to start to look at the early funnel events, right? So cost per lead. And then ultimately, since this is still new, cost per call would be kind of like the deepest event for us to look at. But yeah, so
Sweet.
yeah,
I love it. Yeah. So first thing first, no, dude, I'll go. So first thing first is click-through rate, right? So click-through rate is going to tell us how well are the ads stopping the scroll? How well are they getting people to click out? Honestly, across the board here, pretty dang good. Like I said before, 1% or better is what we're looking for. We're 2.45, 3.5, right? Like all of these are pretty good. This bottom one is a little bit behind the others, but it's not something that concerns me yet because it's really, really early on, right? That's only spent $66. So I don't want to make any rash decisions on that one. But these top two who have spent hundreds of dollars each, I'm really happy actually with the click-through rate. So the next thing I look at is cost per click, and cost per click is just going to be a function of click-through rate and CPMs, right? And that's why I have these next to each other. So if you don't know what CPMs are, it's basically just the market cost for the ads that you're running in this specific instance. So it's cost per 1,000 impressions, but it varies based on the audience that you're targeting, the creative that you're using, the landing page that you're sending to. Facebook takes a ton of factors into play and basically comes up with how much they're going to charge you to run ads, right? So in this case, I'm looking at CPMs and my first thought is, oof, it's a little high. It's a little high, right? So now part of that is because these two are new. And sometimes when you just first launch a campaign, the CPMs take a while to normalize. But even these two are higher than I'd like, right? So Caleb, talk me through why might those be too high and what can I do about that?
Yeah. So first off, I think it's important to know like, okay, what kind of CPMs should you be looking for, right? And so like, I would say that Dakota and I, what we're looking for in an account to see if something's like really like solid CPMs, it's going to vary again, like you said, depending on audiences, but generally speaking, we like CPMs to be like $50 or less. It's kind of like the range that we typically really like to see. Now, if CPMs are high, here are some of the things that immediately I would be looking for is like, number one, is the creative resonating with the audience, right? Because we all know Facebook and Instagram, they only want to serve ads that people actually want to see, that they're actually engaging with, and that like makes people like feel like it's natural on their platform, right? So if people don't like your ad, they're going to charge you more for it. Okay, that's the first piece. The second thing to consider is who you're actually targeting. All right, so are you using lookalikes of like really high-end people, right? Because Facebook's going to charge more for the people that basically are the better leads, if that makes sense, or if there's a smaller group of them, right? Because there's only so many people for them to target. So that's another thing, is looking at your targeting. And then the last thing, this is like pretty huge that a lot of people don't really consider, but when you launch ads, people don't know this. Is a secret tip, okay? Secret tip. So a lot of people don't know this, but when you're launching ads, what Facebook will do is they'll send bots that go out and actually scan your landing page. So they'll go and they'll actually look at all of the copy that you have written on your landing page, and they'll honestly basically have their bots have like an internal like spam ranking system is the way that I picture it. And if your copy on your landing page is saying anything that feels like it's not like the best, right? So if it feels like it's a little bit spammy, or if it feels like you're being too aggressive, or you're just saying things that might not be super compliant with the way that Facebook wants you to say stuff, they will charge you more based off of where you're sending their traffic to, right? So I would say take a peek at those 3 things, look at your creative, look at your targeting, and then check out your actual funnel. Where are you sending people? Because Facebook is going to look at that.
Yeah, those are great tips. So that's basically, what do we do if the CPMs are too high? Now, in this case, I'm not entirely worried about this because our click-through rate is so dang good. So again, your cost per click is going to be a function of your CPMs and your click-through rate. Now, if our click-through rate was only 1%, then I would know, oh, shoot, we're paying way too much for a click, right? Now, in this case, though, it is probably high CPMs because of the audiences we're targeting, but
that's what I'm thinking too.
Our ads are resonating, right? They're clicking on it. So it's okay for me. So it's okay for me right now, I would say, until I scroll to the right and I look at lead costs. I'm not looking there yet because I'm working one piece at a time. Right now, I'm like, okay, tentatively, I'm good with everything so far. CPM is a little bit of a yellow flag, but I'm okay with it for right now until I look at lead cost. So let's look at lead cost. All right. There we go. We're looking at lead costs. So on this top campaign, we got $9.56 a lead, or we call it registration completed in this funnel. And then this one, we got $7.53 a registration. Now, for context, we're asking people for name, phone number, and email for these opt-ins. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is a super good green flag here, right? We're getting emails, phone numbers, and leads for less than $10, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah, Kenneth, I see your question. Email opt-in. No, sir. This is the trifecta here. We're getting name, phone number, and email for less than $10. So it's a good question, email opt-in, because typically, for cheap leads, you might think we're just asking for email. That's pretty low barrier of entry, low friction. They might give us that. But in this case, I'm super happy with these lead costs on the top 2 because we're asking for so much. The bottom 2, again, not enough data. I'm gonna leave those running for a little bit, see what happens. The other note, though, that you can see on the bottom 2, we're optimized toward lead on the top 2. So it makes sense that these are cheap leads. The bottom 2, we're optimized towards schedule. So it might make sense that these stay a little bit higher, right? But hopefully in the long run, more people book from those, right? Because we're optimizing toward that. So really quick, I'm going to actually just pop in and show you guys the landing page just so you kind of have more context on this, because I think it's going to be relevant.
For sure, yeah. So
here you go. So this is, let me zoom in a little bit. So this is the landing page here, right? How to run profitable social media ads, get the ebook. Well, look at that. We're actually asking for much more than that. Caleb, you must have modified this recently. First name, last name, email, phone, and a couple more questions. So I forgot about these 2. So we're getting these for less than $10, and they're answering all of these questions, right? And so that's pretty dang good. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Let's go. All right, cool. So back to the campaign view really quick. So that's our cost per registration. I'm happy with that. That looks good. So now the next piece is cost per content view and appointment scheduled. In this funnel, we're not actually as worried about content view. We're firing it on the schedule page. So like I want to see that data, but like appointment scheduled is the more important one for sure. So here's where it gets a little bit tricky. And this is why. We use something called Hyros to track calls. And you're not going to see that come through right here in this view. But sometimes Facebook, if it's a long user journey, what I mean by that is like we have an opt-in page, a thank you page, another video, and then a booking page, and then a thank you for booking page. Sometimes, even if we fire that schedule event correctly, we use all the right things, sometimes it does not get attributed the right way in the Facebook ad account because it's such a deep funnel thing. So we use a third-party plugin called Hyros to help us track that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into this top campaign and just look and see, do we have any appointments scheduled via Hyros, right? That's what I want to know first. So here are the ad sets for that top campaign. I'm going to jump into here and just look. It doesn't look like we have any schedules. Yep, no schedules yet. So just seeing all of the opt-ins so far, no schedules. So on this top campaign, My goal is appointment scheduled. So I'm looking at this and I'm starting to think, I don't know about this one, right? We've spent $439 and we haven't got a schedule. So what are you thinking, Caleb?
Yeah, that's obviously not ideal. And so yeah, I'd be looking at it. The only other thing I'd look at is I'd look at the ad sets and think through, okay, like have all of them had a chance? Because again, one of the things that we talked about a little bit before, right, is like, do we have enough data in all of these to like make a decision?
Yep.
And so I'd probably check out the ad sets for a second, see how much each one has spent.
And so here's the ad set view. That's a really good call. So we have 3 ad sets within here. One of them is turned off already. It looked like we turned it off really early on. It spent $44 and didn't get a lead. So that's 3 times our KPI basically for lead. It's usually what we use. But apart from that, these top 2, it looks like $305 in this top ad set and $89 in the second one.
Yeah. So what I would say is like the top one, it's gotten 41 leads. None of those 41 leads have booked. It's spent pretty much, I would say, double what our KPI is for the call. So this one is one of the ones that's basically on the fence to shut
to be turned off. Yeah.
It's to be turned off. Yeah. I don't think necessarily that bottom one has enough data yet, but for sure the top one.
Yeah. And to help you guys picture how we think about outside of KPI or inside of KPI, we basically have an internal KPI for cost per call of $150. We're looking to get a call within $150 of spend. But when we're first launching campaigns, we're willing to let a campaign spend 2 or even 3 times that KPI. So $300 or even $450 before getting a call, just to let it learn enough to find the right people for that event. So I'm not at the point where I want to turn this off quite yet, but it is getting close, right? It is getting close. So what I find really interesting, I love that you said we should check out the ad set level there, but here's what's really interesting, guys. Again, to reiterate, our goal for this account is to book calls, right? I don't really care necessarily about my click-through rate and my cost per registration if calls are being booked, right? So I want to highlight this bottom campaign here. It's optimized towards schedule. It's the same funnel, and every metric looks worse on the front end. Click-through rate is worse. CPMs are really high. Cost per click is really high. And we've only had 8 clicks. But one of those 8 people booked a call.
Yep.
So that speaks volumes about the fact that this is a campaign that I want to watch and see, does it scale, right? And Hyros even backs the numbers up. Look, this ad set itself within the campaign has a cost per call of $14.97. So here's another really interesting thing, right? When I pull up the ad set level within this campaign, we start to see a better picture. We start to see that actually this top ad set is getting all of the love and all of the action. It spread the budget out between these 2, but this one's gotten 3 leads and 1 call just in this ad set, right?
Yep.
So
amazing early sign, right? Like that's one of those moments where you see that pop through and you're like, please hold. Please hold. please stay.
Yeah. And a lot of people would be tempted at this point to turn off the other 2 ad sets. But again, guys, this is way too early data, right? We do not want to make any crazy changes. This one's only spent $11. It hasn't even had a chance to get like a lead yet, right? We don't want to do anything major right now. We just want to let it run because again, this campaign is optimized towards schedule. So the more schedules it gets, the more people like this booking a call, the more it's going to learn and the better it's going to get at scale. So basically the way I see it is I look at this and we're talking about scaling today. So let's just make some rash decisions, Caleb. Even though we don't have enough data, let's make some rash decisions, some informed decisions because we're trying to teach the people at home how to scale. So what are some things we could do with this campaign that's already working at a very small level, but let's just say we really like it and it's already working. What are some things we could do to get more results from it?
Yeah. So obviously one of the first things that's tempting is to start to like increase spend. That's one of the things that like immediately I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, it's at 80 a day. With the multiple ad sets in there, obviously this has a lot more room for us to like increase the daily budget. So my first thought is like, if I want more, I could decide, okay, let's talk about increasing the budget. And if so, how much do we want to increase it, right? Like what's safe?
Yep. So when it's early like this, really general rule of thumb, if you don't want to really mess anything up, general rule of thumb is about 20%, right? 20% increases. So I would be totally okay going in here and changing this to like $95, right? When I do that, I'm not worried. I just did it right there. I'm not worried about that changing anything. It's not enough money to change the way it's learning. Now, if you would have tripled that budget and you'd have thrown it at $200 or $300, $400, that will actually change the way it's serving, right? Basically, it's going to take the little pinpoint of people it's finding for that little budget, and it's going to like expand it, or it's going to just go find a new group of people to support that spend. So if you really like the results of a campaign and you don't want to like mess with it, but you just want to get a little bit more, 20% max is it, right? Now, that's not a black and white rule that I always follow. And here's why. Sometimes I already know that all of the things that are set up for that campaign are the right things, and I just want more right now. So what I would do in that case is I would literally duplicate this campaign, right? This is a really easy way to do it. And I would look at the budget, and I would just start this budget a wee bit higher, like $200 a day. And I would just go up here to my campaign, and I would just say something like budget adjusted. And then I would just push this, because quickly now, within a day or two, I'm going to see, are the results holding at this budget, right? And I'm not messing with the other one at all. I'm just pushing a new one live with all of the same parameters, seeing, can I get more results with all of these same parameters at a higher budget? Right.
It's so key, guys. Like, this is a huge thing in advertising. So many people come to us and they're like, I want to change my budgets, but I don't want to screw up what I have going on. What Dakota just showed you is a really easy way to continue the results from a winning campaign without screwing up what's actually happening. Right? Because we know making massive changes to an existing campaign totally can screw it up. Like, there's been accounts that have just been ruined because they've like taken a really great winner and then just ruined the campaign. But duping it out, it's a safe way to kind of bring those results into another campaign. And worst case scenario, if that one doesn't work, you just shut off the new one, and then the old one that was winning is still winning.
Still there.
So that's kind of the magic part.
And you're still scaling that old one up 20%. And 20%, really, I wouldn't do 20% every day. I would probably do every other day, right? I would let it learn a little bit, check the results back, and do every other day. But some other learnings, like if we're just talking about scaling this account, some other learnings I think from this really early data is that even though the lead cost and the call and the click cost is higher on these optimized towards schedule campaigns, we're getting schedules, and that's been our goal all along, right? So when I'm like testing new things and duplicating out and testing other audiences, in my mind, if the results hold here and we keep getting schedules, below KPI for these optimization events, I'm going all in on those, right? And then my next question will be, how can I optimize for schedule and lower my cost per click, right? What can I do to move that needle now that I know that that optimization event works better?
Great.
So
Love that.
yeah. So that's kind of a rudimentary kind of look into what we do to scale. The other thing, like, this account isn't quite old enough. We could probably do this training again in about a month, Caleb, and probably have a better look back time, because the next piece is we said 7 days is usually what we're looking for. The next piece is, what time periods do we check for at scale when we're spending thousands and thousands a day for months and months? How do we decide which ones to keep on, turn off, scale up, all that stuff? And we have a different system for that. But this has really been, how do you get your ads from just launching to spending a little bit more while keeping your results?
Exactly, dude. Exactly. Guys, really quick, before we head out, I want to make sure that you understand, like, we are doing this so that we can help you, meaning like there are real dollars that are being spent in the account, right? So this isn't just, you're not just like watching videos of like theory, and you're not just watching like some YouTuber that's like, oh, hey, like this is like how you should do this, right? Because this is how Facebook says to do it. Like, we are literally jumping into live accounts. We're showing you real ad spend. We're showing you real results that are happening today, right? So you don't have to like go out and pay to go make the mistakes yourself. Come here, hang out with us, ask your questions. We want to show you guys exactly what's actually happening in the account. So guys, we're here every Friday. If you're not in the Facebook group, go join us, come hang out, get your questions answered. And We love you guys. Happy
Let's
Friday.
go. Happy Friday, guys. Peace.
Peace out.